Tonight on Ground Crew Command Radio, it's all about preparation, folks, knowing what's truly a very big potential and very realistic likelihood of manifesting as a result of and after these three huge mass astrological and mass energetic dates of the 10th, 11th and 12th of January. We're going to get into the ins and outs, the hows and the whys, and above all, the big why of why we need to be there at critical mass numbers with Laura Eisenhower. Things are only getting more volatile. What can we do about it? That's tonight and so much more on Ground Crew Command Radio. We're back. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You're listening to the Unknown Light Warrior. So it's a time for a disciplined, somewhat internal focus right now, folks, because our abilities, our intentions, our resoluteness, our decisions, and our actions is what's going to decide what the world looks like for 2020 and beyond. Laura, this is your third appearance on Ground Crew Command Radio, so it's great to have you back on the third time, and thanks again for setting aside the time. How have you been?
I've been good. Thank you so much for having me. How have you been?
Well, like you, I'm sure, extremely busy.
Yeah.
Struggling to come up for air here and there, and but you know, when we're heading into such tumultuous times, 11/11, you know, yeah, that's how it is, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
So this discussion, for obvious reasons, this discussion's primarily going to be centered around the three huge dates, which is January 10th, 11th, and 12th. And one of the goals I want to achieve is for the starseed, aka lightworker population of the world, to be better briefed and better prepared than our charming black coven counterparts. That's quite important. It's really important, folks, that we adopt the mindset of a very serious, very real operation in the, I suppose, 3D sense of the word, in the agency military sense of the word. And that's the kind of thing that Laura's also quite learned about, needless to say. And so let's get our energies, our minds, our hearts, our souls prepared to make the most of these huge opportunities coming up. Because like I said, our partners in Chakras, to use that euphemism, will also be trying to make the most of it as well, to swing things their way. And once again, we'll be there, standing between them and humanity and Gaia. So that's just a small taste of you know, what we're dealing with, what's at stake, I guess. Of course, the overall message is a highly positive and encouraging one, and that's what we're about to get into now with Laura. I guess astrologers must be highly sought after these days with these huge astrological events coming up. And correct me if I'm wrong with that, Laura. Maybe I'm assuming that you've been getting interviewed pretty much every other day.
Oh, it's random. sometimes, yeah, it's up and down as far as how much of that I do. I do my own interviews too, so just always staying on board with sharing my information and listening to others.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you said that to quote what you said, this eclipse season is capable of directly resolving the Saturn-Moon matrix frequency distortions that have kept our world out of balance for God knows how long, and the control agendas connected to some dark races is not going to withstand this. Now, let's break that down. Can you talk more about how this eclipse season can directly resolve once and for all the Saturn-Moon matrix frequency distortions? And I suppose the dates that give us the biggest opportunities for that, I guess.
Right. Well, it kind of comes down to the individual. It's not like the threats are just going to, go away, but it's really important to empower what is possible, because it absolutely is. And this ascension window period, which is called the stellar activation cycle, is holding, the energetics on an astrological level, as far as these planetary alignments are concerned and where we are in history, to, collapse this cabal. And it has to crumble within ourselves because the war is on consciousness. And Saturn has a lot to do with, well, when we look at the dark nature of Saturn and the history of Saturn, it used to be the sun, and it went dark and became Saturn with these rings and holds this really dense quality that represents the control system and the artificial nature of how we experience reality. And a lot of different researchers and scientists have talked about this, the artificial component of the rings of Saturn, how that impacts the moon, the artificial component of the moon, and how that's really what has compromised a huge portion of our DNA and constructed this sort of artificial, world where we're not connected to our galactic chakras. We're functioning at a very limited DNA expression, and the junk DNA is basically connected into this artificial matrix, which has been overlaid on the planetary grid network. So because we have a direct link with the grids and with multidimensional reality through our chakras and our true DNA template, Pluto being the planet of alchemy, death, rebirth, alchemy, transformation, being very, very close to Saturn, is helping to dissolve this and to give us a chance to go through a massive rebirth. So when we look at our own individual lives, we have to ask ourselves, how do we relate to Saturn? Well, Saturn has to do with authority. It can be the authority of the way we were raised by our parents. It can be outer authority connected to school systems. It can be politics, religion, anything that represents rulers or power structures in the world. And we know there's a lot of corruption behind all that. And the elitists are very aware of these aspects and these alignments. So they're doing all they can to create a lot of panic, a lot of fear, and we see a lot of these disasters taking place and movements that are very confusing. Climate change, sure. I'm not saying that climate change doesn't exist, but if we don't look at the dark technologies, directed energy weapons and things like geoengineering and chemtrails and all this stuff, and we don't put that in the conversation when we talk about climate change, then we're missing a huge, huge piece. So that's kind of an issue right now, because as we see, there's a lot of division as far as what people feel about all of that. And,
Any excuse they can find to create not just fear and panic, but polarization, they'll use it.
That's the worst part of it all. And that's why it's easy for these harvesting technologies to continue to take and harvest our loosh or the dark energy between each other. All the conflict, creates an energy that can be utilized and used against us. So we're, in a sense, being weaponized. We're being played. Our dreams are being played. Our fears are being played. And so, people don't know really where to stand in all of it. So, so these alignments, January 12th, this whole month is really powerful, but Saturn is conjunct Pluto. Also the Sun and Mercury are conjunct this. And that's following a lunar eclipse. So right now we're in eclipse, gateway. And then on the 11th, Uranus is going direct. So Uranus is going to be really like helping us to see how our inner breakthroughs are affecting the outer world. And so if each person is having an inner breakthrough connected to finding a true sense of self and authenticity and truth, the shadow side of Uranus, though, is things like transhumanism and dark technologies like AI. And that's why as we enter the Aquarian age, some of this stuff is breathing down our neck as being a possible timeline. It's still connected to Uranus, but it's almost, I mean, it's similar to the dark side of, Saturn, how that's been a control system. It doesn't mean that Saturn doesn't have good qualities, because it rules responsibilities, discipline, and things that we can, focus on in order to thrive. That might require a bit of structure. And so it basically rules the law of structure. But when it's a control system, or it's coming in the form of an energetic that represses us or creates imbalance between our masculine and feminine, then it's controlling us in a limited way. So there's going to be a lot of aspects, though, that kind of help to lift us above these possibilities. And in a free will universe, it's almost like everything under the sun is possible. So in a sense, humanity is being pushed to the edge, and a huge transformation can result. And that's what these aspects represent, and this eclipse window, starting from December 25th, when the South Node is being emphasized. The South Node is still being emphasized because of the conjunctions being so close to it. So that takes us into the past. It takes us into how much we have to drop the old paradigm, because any belief systems or attachments that we're holding in connection with old paradigm stuff is a part of the reason it's so hard to move forward, because that's where the conquer and divide agenda takes place. If we can reset our belief systems based in truth, based on our own authenticity, based on cosmic and natural laws, and we can move towards Cancer, this lunar eclipse, Cancer North Node, which is what we need to integrate as a humanity, then we're integrating the power of the feminine, the intuition, the nurturing qualities. And then we are capable of clearing the distortion of the masculine and feminine artificial projection and program, and really start to illuminate that true divine template that we carry. And so this is probably the most powerful window that I can think of in this whole ascension time, but I don't like to measure things like that necessarily. But that's why there's a lot of meditations going on, and it's really important to have focused intention, to do the inner work. So South Node being December 25th, all that energy taking us into the past, and then some of these conjunctions like Jupiter conjunct the South Node coming up, is showing us that we're going to feel a lot of grief connected to the fact that we might not feel like we have anything we can believe in. And that's the old paradigm collapsing. When we can put our attention forward and really work on coming together as a humanity and really calling this stuff out, we can believe in ourselves. We can believe in our own creative power. We can believe in our connection to the divine. We can believe in the power of this earth and these cosmic alignments and our connection to spirit. All this old paradigm stuff has mostly been playing us in order to use our energy in these times right now to take us down a road we don't need to go.
The January 10th astrological effects and ramifications, is that an opportunity to clear the slate as well, mentally, in terms of beliefs and so forth, or is it just...
I can just answer where I think you're going. I mean, is it about cleaning the slate? I mean, it can be. The problem is people keep putting their attention on the propaganda, on news that might not be, totally genuine, and we keep externalizing everything, there's always going to be something to hook us in and rob us of our own ability to process the energies that are available. So it really depends on the person, and hopefully people can, maybe step away from it all, connect with nature, because, it's a theft of our creative power to always be looking outside of ourselves and be encouraged to look outside of ourselves. Of course, we need to do it to a certain degree, but if we don't step back and really see how it's resonating with our intuition, if we can't even hear our own inner voice, if we're not living in our authenticity and we're following something to the extent of losing a sense of self and all that, then I'm sure there's going to be a really strong tactics to divert us from what is possible during this time. And we're already seeing this with the fires, but at the same time, the power of the human spirit can override it, because there's a lot of beauty coming out of how people are coming together and how, soul and spirit are so much more powerful than the physical world around us. And if we can unite on those higher principles, whatever's happening in the physical is not going to absolutely and totally crush us. It's going to crush us to a certain degree, but not to the point of, putting us completely and totally in victim mentality. So, I mean, it's an opportunity to really, leverage these energies for the greater good And it's going to make all the difference in the world if people can take, the time to do that. And so mass meditations are really helpful because it helps us to ground and anchor and go within and just send out, positive and powerful intentions. And that will utilize this powerful transformative energy. Being dragged into the South Node, people need to just be willing to drop the beliefs and attachments. And so there's going to be encouragement to integrate, that other energy. But, when we're looking at this eclipse window, we're dealing with the Saturn moon. We're dealing with Capricorn, Saturn, moon, and Cancer. So the fact that we're working with Saturn and the moon, and we got this Saturn moon matrix with all its distortions, and Pluto's in the mix, and Jupiter's in the mix, and Uranus, these are the higher energies of light that are catapulting us forward to be able to connect with the organic nature of, how we were originally seated. And all those sacred geometries and those templates have been manipulated. And that's why it's so easy for this Saturn moon matrix manipulation to, continue. So people might be so entrenched in those programs that it's going to be hard for them to take a huge leap. But hopefully enough numbers will, and it'll have that ripple effect. And we've already seen that, these ripple effects happen, and they have been. But some people, instead of moving forward and integrating the medicine, it's easy for people to panic, get distracted, maybe turn to substances, maybe turn to pharmaceuticals, and all the traps that society is still presenting to us. And so a lot of people are not going to be on board, but I think enough will be on board to help really clean the slate. And the growth periods are going to be intense, though, and they might last a while. The first stage can be, a lot of anger, resistance, but, at least energy is moving. It goes in different stages for people. So it's not going to be overnight, but I think it's going to launch most humans on a pretty profound, growth period, because more crimes against humanity are being exposed. That is continuing, and that's all a part of this window as well, is that Saturn representing the old paradigm with Pluto, really like purging and bringing everything up to the surface. Humans have no choice but to squarely look at themselves and ask, how much have I bought into this? How much have I given my power to this? And so I don't know. You got to be really, really asleep or closed off to not be, able to process this and see it for what it really is. I'd be really surprised. I mean, it's surprising already that it's such a challenge, but at the same time, it's understandable because it's so horrific. But it doesn't have to be. I mean, that's part of alchemy. If we can
that's the thing. That's why these, it's important that people are fully aware that there's going to be rather profound, and I'll use the understated term, destabilising ramifications of the collective, the human collective on the surface, from the discoveries, the disclosures, and even their own stuff being forced up, and them sort of losing their mind and externalising it and not being able to make sense of what's going on. A lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, and which compounds the need for mass meditations on these 3 dates even more, from my perspective. And now I want to address the common belief that that goes, if it's written in the stars, then it's going to happen, regardless. And I would like you to address that, because you'll know better than most that with every astrological event, there's a higher octave possibility, and then there's the lowest octave possibility of the same event. And you've dabbled on the lowest octave possibility of the 10th of January to begin with, with emotions running pretty raw and this, that, and the other, and overall chaos. But what would you say to people that believe that if it's written in the stars, it'll happen anyway? We don't really need to do anything. What our responsibilities as starseeds in terms of helping humanity reach the highest octave possibilities and avoid the lowest octave possibilities, which, the black covens are obviously going to be ritualizing like crazy to push humanity onto the lowest octave possibilities.
Right. Well, we're the 3D, when people talk about 3D Earth, they're talking about the personality matrix. And that is where the matrix programming takes place through social engineering and mind control. But that we're not limited to 3D at all. We never were. But it's been somewhat blocked from us through frequency fences and seals put in our DNA, and a lot of the stuff that has created culture and society, and how it's really working to limit people in how they function, not fully in their multidimensional awareness. Our galactic memories have been wiped. So it makes it real challenging. But I think the most important thing is to remember, it's trying to play us on a personality level. That's why people fight and argue, and there's ego battles, and you got to see things my way, no my way. And the most important thing is we treat one another with love and respect first off, and we find a way to have conversations that are respectable, and that can be how we function with each other. But we are connected to the higher, galactic mind, the divine mind, the greater logos intelligence of, the planet that has been disrupted, but there's places where, it hasn't been in dimensions beyond this one. And that's the whole idea of ascension, is that we move through that alchemy. We get our throat chakra back, which connects to 5D, and we begin to use words that can shift energy, because our words are our power. So if mind control can, limit our thinking and control the way we think, then our words are spreading that virus, because we're emanating that mind control or that social engineering, and it, conditions people, it affects people, it triggers people, and it keeps that matrix program alive. So when we go through this clearing and we allow these energies to work their magic on us, our throat chakra gets cleared, and then our words hold a frequency of truth, and it can activate people. It can awaken what's dormant. It can help people to unplug or detach from AI signals and some of these dangers. And so we have to, do our best with that. So yes, it's inevitably going to happen, but it's not so much what do we need to do, what do we need to avoid? Because we are conduits. We want this energy to move through us. We need to understand our DNA. The nucleic acids of our DNA are the elements: earth, air, fire, water. The mitochondrial DNA is ether, and it's connected to the mother and is passed down generation to generation, but it's been damaged because we've been in these dark cycles of history, and there's a lot of, presentations that I do to go more in depth about that, but that's all being corrected. So, even there's books about Sophia's correction. Well, this connects to the Venus transits and what Venus has been doing to help the ether energy flow in greater circulation on the planet, so that we can purify and begin to upgrade our DNA. So this is all happening. It's a cosmic and earthly event. Best thing we can do is get out of the way of ourselves, really, really take the time to allow this energy to work its magic, and just to hold really good intentions and do our best to be resources, do our best to hold as much peace and harmony as we can, and be accountable, when we make a mistake, because it's very difficult energies. We're not always going to be at our best. We might put our foot in our mouth. We might have a little bit of something come up. So let's just be humble and say, hey, I'm sorry, or I'm self-correcting here. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and each other, and the best thing we can do is, be transparent and be as communicative as, possible. But yeah, it's inevitably going to happen. But a lot of people talk about a bifurcation. I don't think all of a sudden people are going to just all of a sudden drop what they've invested themselves in for so long. I don't think we're going to see this sort of mainstream social engineering agenda just go poof. But I think slowly people will begin to turn away from it, because, that aha moment and epiphany can come in when you got strong energies like Jupiter and Uranus, because Uranus connects to truth. Jupiter's all about expansion, and it's in earth signs right now. And earth signs mean it's going to manifest. If it's not in an earth sign, it's more a concept or a thought or emotion or a feeling. But when it starts to go into the earth energies, like we're seeing with Saturn, Pluto, all these planets in earth signs, this is something manifesting on the physical plane. It's going to be very hard for a major diversion to take place. But at the same time, it's pretty amazing how much people are already, bought into it. So from somebody who's like a starseed or light worker or whatever you want to call it, it seems incredibly difficult to not be able to wake up to this madness, that's going on. But the problem is they keep creating movements to give us almost a false sense of a solution. And then it's still the conspiracy theory stuff. Let's not look at, directed energy weapons. Let's not look over there. We've got this climate change thing we're fighting for, and now we just had the fires. So is that going to be leveraged to fight something that's not including a huge, huge piece related to disclosure? So these are all concerns. So as light workers, star seeds, whatever, just keep putting out information. Just keep holding the sacred flame. Do your best to stay in balance in light of any attack or any criticisms. Let it burst through you, because starseed energies cannot fall onto the negative or artificial timelines because they're not wired for that. But we're witnessing it. It's really hard not to want to bring as many along as possible, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, and certainly participate in mass meditations. Can you talk about, and with all these aspects, particularly on January 10th, how we can use mass meditation on that day to soften these tense times that are coming, particularly on the 10th, and to avoid disasters, minimize or completely prevent the manifestation of false flags, which the Cabal will predictably try to do, or other so-called natural catastrophes. I mean, they're already, there's stuff already going on in Iraq, and with tensions building with Iran, that needs to be cleared, energetically speaking, so it can be resolved on the physical. What would you say to all of this?
Yeah, well, to me, we win the war within ourselves, and then the outer world is going to change in response to that. The Earth responds to us. And so the health of us as a collective is reflected in what we're seeing with a lot of these events that take place, a lot of the dark technology used that harvests our energy, the weaponization of nature. I mean, we're not really connecting with nature and standing in alignment to be able to see these positive, changes. But that's different now. So I guess I'm sort of more referring to the past and these dark cycles of history. Ever since this ascension window, we've seen a gradual and slow shifting and seeing a lot of positive come out of it. There's still a ways to go. So holding space for a mass meditation is to shield ourselves, shield our auric field, to ground our energies, anchor our energies, and breathe and hold strong intentions and allow the circulation to move through us so that we are generating this ascension energy into the physical world around us. And the reason it's so important is because if we're too busy watching the news and the next thing that comes in the news, it in a sense pokes holes in us. It causes us to all of a sudden, collapse in fear, pain, anxiety. It doesn't mean we ignore it, but if we can just set aside time to maybe just step away from it all, just so we can harness our creative power. Because the thing is, when we're not harnessing our creative power, it's similar to just in our own physical world. If we're scattered, if we're running around, running a bunch of errands, and we haven't even ate or slept very well, we're going to burn out pretty fast. We're going to have fatigue, adrenal fatigue. So we know when we look at our own physical lifestyle and our own bodies and how they operate, we know that we need good sleep, rest, food. We got to take care of our basic needs. We need to, be in our breath. We need circulation. We need exercise. There's things that we need in order to be healthy. So as a humanity, we can't just be running around with our heads cut off, responding to every, crisis. Not to say that we're not going to, but if we don't take the time to harness our creative power, then we're going to, be a very drained and fatigued humanity. And we're going to feel like victims, and we're going to feel overwhelmed, and we're going to feel like we're at the mercy of everything outside of us, and we're going to feel like we have no real control, and it's going to throw a lot of people into depression and even suicidal tendencies. So if we can just prepare now, moving into this, 10th, 11th, and 12th, these 3 days are incredibly powerful, and really just take the time to just harness, call our energy back, call our power back, write down intentions, things we want to focus on, and really make that connection, through just simple devotion. I'm devoted to the earth. I'm devoted to spirit and all these, alignments happening. They impact our organs. They're connected to our glands. So we're going to have a lot of physical symptoms if we don't work with this. Even if we work with it in a positive way, more than likely we're going to have physical symptoms because it's impacting the physical plane. So that meditation is also going to be good for our health. Because anything that pulls our attention away is going to limit our capacity to be grounded and connected to spirit. It's going to pull us into our survival chakra. It's going to put us into, our emotionality and our ego wounds. And it's very disconnecting. So it's incredibly important because as these energies are playing out on the planet and we have our creative power harnessed with intention, that is the override frequency, and that is way more powerful than any weaponry or any dark agenda. The reason it's been so hard, though, is because we're not anchored and grounded with the planet enough and with what's happening. A lot of people are, but for the most part, others aren't. So even small numbers coming together can make a huge difference. And I know that these mass meditations are going to be huge. So I think this is exactly what needs to take place. And I'm so glad I'm going to be a part of one. There's another one, Prepare for Change. I think a lot of people are doing, things. So I would just really recommend between the 10th and 12th that everybody sets aside a lot of time, looks into these, group meditations. And yeah, just know that transitioning from old paradigm to new paradigm is massive, and we are affected by other people, not just, our own energy. So meditation can also help us to not be carrying everybody else's stuff. As empaths, it's very easy to. So it also can give the empath a break and help them to just be in their column of light, grounded, anchored, and yeah.
And remember, folks, the ultimate way to amplify into this matrix your creative powers is through mass meditation as the number one tool. And, it really is crucial on these highly opportunistic but precarious dates that we take charge of the energies. It's such a profound moral and ethical, not just soul path obligation. And let's get into January the 11th with Uranus and Aries going direct. How does that release suppressed planetary Kundalini energy, which is what Cobra has mentioned regarding that date?
Yeah, it's a really powerful electrical energy, and the electrical and magnetic are, connected to the ley lines, connected to our energetic circuitry, connected to the masculine and feminine, how they work together. Uranus is a really, really high vibration, and when it comes in, it stimulates the nervous system. It helps to release us of anything that doesn't serve us. It's the great liberator. It's also known to be the planet of rebellion. So rebellion can get pretty exhausting. So as we break the chains, we got to reset the energy with Saturn, and that's kind of the new paradigm. Is the law of structure is shifting to accommodate the high frequency of Uranus, Jupiter, and all these higher, energies. And so the whole idea is that if, an artificial timeline would want to supplement that through transhumanism and AI instead of our DNA being upgraded, which is what is available. And so DNA upgrading has a lot to do with Kundalini. Kundalini being at the base of our spine, going up our chakras, takes us all the way into the 8th and 9th chakra, these galactic chakras that really hold the galactic cores of Andromeda and Milky Way in unity. And that's a neutron window, actually, that connects us to the core of the planet, the 13th gate. And but that's actually the chakra connection, which forms the infinity spiral in our energy body. And so the Kundalini is capable of connecting into it. So when we look at a lot of the societal programs and the misuse of sexual energy or the exploitation or promotion of sexual energy without love, that's not really, true Kundalini. It's very, very limited, and it gets stuck in the lower chakras.
Yeah, it's partitioned deliberately and artificially, right?
Yeah, and there's extractions and harvesting of that. And people can mistake that for like Kundalini and, but anyway, true Kundalini activation clears the chakras, gives us, an amazing amount of, creative power, and it goes beyond our 7th chakra. It helps us to connect into something that is what's already, happening, and it connects to, stargates on the planet as well. I think those stargates are in China, Tibet area. So Uranus is going to help to remove those fences and seals. It's going to help us to connect to truth. And because it's on a physical level, our physical body connected to the Kundalini, is going to ignite. And then, we got dragon lines connected to the earth grids. And so those things are going to, because it's connected to the ley lines and the electrical energy is coming into the earth in a way that it normally doesn't, it's going to be the next step in the planetary energies moving us forward. And because we're directly connected to the earth and the cosmos, This is something we'll experience in our own bodies. The resistance of it and the block of it can be very detrimental to people. It can blow their circuits. This is not the kind of thing that you want to, it's like putting a lid on a volcano, putting a lid on a super high voltage electric energy that's organic, connected to light.
All right, so we've got an idea of what our partners in contrast will be attempting on these dates.
Excuse me?
So we have an idea of what our partners in contrast may attempt on these dates through the rituals, which is to block, prevent, interfere, distort.
Saturn's not creating any blocks, but what they can do, because Pluto and Saturn conjunction are receiving no aspects, no oppositions, no squares, nothing. It's just standing on its own, which means anything could happen. So it's really up to each individual. And these are powerful, powerful creative energies. Pluto's very connected to Kundalini, not just Uranus moving forward. But Uranus, when it was retrograde, it was really helping us to have inward breakthroughs and help us to, look at what is holding us back on an inward level. Now, as it goes direct, that energy is moving into action. So, people hopefully have been doing a lot of inner work, breaking a lot of, old programs, ancestral patterns, and then boom, it's like, off to the race, let's go, and then the Uranus energy moves us forward, and it's very accelerated, very powerful. And then Pluto's doing the transformative stuff. Pluto and Uranus are the planets that take us into the initiatory experiences to be in alignment with ascension. We all have our own relationship with these planets in our natal charts. It really depends on people's own personal relationship with these energies. Are they resistant to them? Or are they able to flow with them? And every person's chart gives us that information. That's why I, do astrology readings and 15-minute calls with clients so that they can check their own personal chart. So what they can do, though, because these energies are hitting the South Node, which has to do with the past, has to do with past lives, has to do with the dark cycles of history, it has to do with the collective memory of where we've been.
So all that stuff may come up through the collective.
In that Capricorn vibration, which is old paradigm energy, they might want us to stay in a trauma pattern, so we create a feedback loop. And so that electrical energy, can sort of be missed because our attention is going somewhere else. But that's going to be pretty hard because Uranus is so powerful. It would be pretty hard. I think people are going to have breakthroughs right and left during this time, but knowing what they know and how they've manipulated these planetary energies in the past, I'm sure they got something up their sleeves, but the more prepared we are, the less affected we'll be.
Exactly. We'll be there to ensure that any blocks are gracefully cleared, because, there's a lot of past, there's layers and layers of past planetary and human collective traumas that will be forced up. And we want that to be as transmuted, cleared as smoothly and gracefully as possible, so that we don't end up with earthquakes, we don't end up with, societal and political destabilisation while these things try to push themselves through to be cleared. There's still an aspect of how well do we want this to go? How unfettered, how graceful do we want these to go? And because it can get a little jarring and jolting. The
trauma piece is huge, just like you said, because the collective trauma is major. And so Uranus can also be used to give us all panic attacks and PTSD, because trauma is stored in the nervous system and Uranus stimulates the nervous system. But with Jupiter rays, being involved, more than likely it's just going to blow people open in a really, positive way. And when you said, you said something, but for some people, meditation's hard. Maybe for others, they could put on sound healing music and dance, because that generates a great power into the collective. So if one's, maybe listening to something in the hertz of, the frequency of love or grounding or wisdom, that might also be a great way to spend the next 3 days, is play drums, play an instrument, sing, dance, with really powerful intentions and the right frequency to emit, these energies in a because that, generates a lot of energy. And just, unions, just really amp up the intimacy and love too, because sacred union relationships have been targeted. So, intimacy, connecting, communicating, and just, love, all the things that come with love. That's Kundalini, right? Sacred union relationships coming together in that way would be a really powerful thing too, because they know that. And that's why in secret space programs and different projects, they manipulate the sexual energy, because that's a really powerful creative force. So if you have a really good sacred union partner you feel good about, this would be a great time also to really dedicate to more harmony, more togetherness, more intimacy.
Yeah, definitely. Very good idea. You've talked about the opening of natural stargates and the activation of the 13th gate, which is located in Ayers Rock, aka Uluru in Central Australia, being connected to Venus transit that occurred on June 2004 and then on 2012. And then we can go on. I mean, you go on to say on January 11th and 12th, 2020, a massive planetary solar plexus chakra energy activation is taking place. It will start at Uluru Rock in Central Australia and will end at Malta. And just to continue on to finish this important point, life energy is stored in the solar plexus, the center of creative energy, which is interesting. This primary chakra maintains the global health and vitality of the planet. Now, I'm sure I've said enough there. What else, I suppose, can you clarify for that with regards to this natural stargate that, at the very least, even if they are activated already, I suspect they're going to receive some sort of a significant upgrade or serve the purpose of healing the electrical and magnetic aspects of Gaia, and as a result of that, the human collective.
Okay, so if we look at the solar plexus is incredibly important, but, when we look at the planet Mars, hidden Mars agenda, and the Venus transits working on that correction, because, the whole Mars-Venus thing needs to work together. Our power center needs to be connected to love. Our power center needs to be connected to wisdom. People, we all have this thing about ego. Ego is very important. Ego identity is connected to our solar plexus. It's connected to the planet Mars. But even Venus, as far as the transits go, it spends 9 months in the underworld, 9 months not in the underworld. It's got the lovers and the warrior, and it's like two sides of a coin. So that helps with the Mars energy, because all these things are connected, not disconnected. So our chakras don't need to be as disconnected as they actually are. So Mars is life force. It's the energy that circulates throughout our body, and it's, self-willpower. It's the ability to take action in our lives and create. It's that drive that we have. Without that drive, we're unmotivated. Maybe we're depressed. Maybe we don't want to do a whole lot, but we still might have, intentions and dreams. So, but we can't really do it if the engine's not going to start. So Mars is like the engine, and it gives us energy and the ability to take action. And it also is our free will choices. Our ego identity decides what is it going to believe in, what is it going to fight for, what is it going to serve. So an activation there, along with these other planetary alignments, is going to help Mars, the solar plexus, connect with the higher mind, connect with love, wisdom, and really be that power that can generate these higher principles and higher vibrations into the world. Without having the solar plexus connect, then the energy isn't streaming, so it takes action, and action is, a form of prayer where we're not just hoping something else does it for us. We are the action behind the prayer, and that's what this can represent.
Okay, fantastic. I want to get clarification for people who, many who aren't grid workers or don't have intimate knowledge of Gaia's grid. Based on the bit of research that I did, let me see. There are 7 chakras on Earth and 5 outside it. So yes, life energy is stored in the solar plexus and the center of creative energy, but it says Malta is one of the chakras of the world. It is the 3rd chakra, the solar plexus chakra, the digestive system of the planet in the northern hemisphere. And Uluru Rock in Australia is a solar plexus for the southern hemisphere. And then it goes on to say Uluru is the original solar plexus of Earth since the time of Lemuria, when the first Pleiadians landed on Earth. And then Malta became the solar plexus of the northern hemisphere during the 3rd era of Atlantis. So, understandably, there's all sorts of different types of
not everybody
grids and chakras, and it quite often causes a bit of confusion. So before we go on, can you bring any clarity to where the solar plexus is, at least at the moment?
Well, I'm not going to, negate that. I mean, I think, it's all connected, but, if you look at 7 root races, there's 5 cloister races. 5 cloister races are the star seeds. So the 12 stargates are connected to the 12 tribes. And because they connect to different locations, then you could break it down to there being 7. So I'm not going to argue with that. As far as solar plexus chakra on the Earth, I mean, I've heard conflicting information about that. So but I think because it's all connected, and they all are energy centers, that people just have to feel into what resonates the most, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of, with the grids alone, there's the ley line grids, there's the Hartmann grids, there's another type of grid whose name escapes me right now. And there's sometimes smaller versions of the same chakras, but of an etheric kind, not magnetic kind. And
right. Well, yeah. Well, the Uluru has always been connected, from my understanding, to the 13th gate, the Mother Arc energy.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. I mean, there's a big vortex near where I live. It's supposed to be the crown chakra of the given area that I live in. But at the same time, somehow with a divine masculine vortex. So there you go. You can get conflicting, well, they may appear conflicting, but really they're not. And,
I agree with that. And there's been a lot of damage to the Earth grids too. And so, and I mean, the whole deal is that these stargates are connected to our chakras, our DNA is connected to the Earth grids. And as we begin to open up to more of who we are, it's in alignment with the fact that that's happening on the planet. The electric and magnetic, that's, the 12 codons in our DNA of masculine and feminine are healing. And, but it's an energy circulation that isn't, separate. So it all ends up, working together. Like our Mars chakra can impact our heart. That stress can actually put strain on our heart. So it connects with our 4th chakra too. And they're all in communication with each other in our bodies, and same with the planet. So I think there might be different times, there are peak cycles that hold more of a frequency towards, sometimes we have to be tough love and aggressive with our hearts. Is that still coming from our heart chakra, or is it working with our Mars energy too? So, there's times where there's an integration of expression. There's times where, sometimes we just have to soften ourselves and maybe just focus on one aspect, but, it really depends. So when we're dealing with a ton of conjunctions that are concentrated in one area, then it's going to bring in all the different frequencies connected to what those planetary bodies hold, which also is going to, light up the different stargates and how they're communicating with each other on the planet. Okay. So that's kind of how I see that. It's not as limited as we might think, and it's really hard for people to define. But that's always something I'm wanting to, the thing with the 13th gate, and, I was just down in Chichen Itza. That's where the Venus transits, and, that's where they've mapped it out, and that's what that temple's all about, is the Venus transits. But that's also, connected to these other huge power points all over the Earth, because, one can start to activate, and then it's going to send that to open something elsewhere. And so there's grid workers all over the planet working these energies. And then I really see what comes out of it is that it's not a 3D matrix at all. It's a intense and powerful geometry. And now that the dodecahedron is not in reversal anymore, that ether energy is now able to circulate, which allows us purification. They want to keep the elements toxic because that keeps us dumbed down. And so the programming keep us dumbed down. But if we're doing our own purification work, and if we're not buying into the programming, we offset that and we start to experience a different higher Earth energy, is how I see it.
I agree. Again, it seems like things will just boil down to, clearing the blocks, both, within Gaia, her grids, the human collective, just clearing the blocks that come up as these natural divine energies and activations come through. And the more they bash into stuff, the more jarring and jolting and destabilising it will be on the planet and society and politics. And so we need to be there to clear that, and, anything that comes up.
Yep, absolutely. And so when blocks come up, they often are in the form of a trigger, something, jars us, jolts us, gives us anxiety, and so life gives us everything we need to know where we're blocked. So do our astrological charts. So, the more we know about our chart, the more we know about ourselves, and we can see, maybe some of the unconscious places that we're still being hit, with blocking type, energies. It's good to, see it, because we each, it's affecting us all differently. And, there's the past life component. Some people are really still stuck in their past life and have a lot of blocks connected to that. So some, it's just a lot of, so that's going to be, really important. And that's why physical exercise, putting good food in your body, working with the elementals that you might need in order to offset maybe where one is out of balance. So if a person has an excess fire energy, they might want to soak in some water. If somebody has a lot of predominant earth energy, we're here to integrate polarity. That's the whole idea of South Node solar eclipse that we experienced on December 25th going into the North Node lunar eclipse. And so that's an integration of polarity. On a soul level, that's how we ascend. Because as a soul, when we come in, we know we have to integrate polarity in order to rise above the 3D program, to get out of duality. And so our soul is encoded with that knowledge. So we're born with an energy signature connected to our own personal South Node. And then all of us are on the journey to integrate our North Node. On the planet, we're going from old paradigm Saturn to, the mother energy. And it breaks down the Saturn-Pluto, the Saturn-Moon, matrix, because Pluto is helping us to remove those blocks. So it's going to be a lot easier to remove blocks during this time than ever before. And we've been in that process for a long time, because Pluto and Saturn have been very close to each other for all of 2019. So it's not just going to be one big thing. We've been in preparation zone, and we've been working this energy for a really long time. And some, if they have these personal aspects in their chart, have been working it, maybe their whole life, or not even going into that zone. They might be dealing with other issues, but maybe programming and blockages haven't been, the overriding issue.
Okay. Well, so would you say that on the 11th is going to be a bit of a big crescendo with the whole Saturn and Pluto situation that existed throughout 2019?
Yeah,
is that accurate, or?
Yeah, well, all the conjunctions happening near the South Node in the sign of Capricorn it's like a lot of weight is being put into the past. So in a sense, we can almost like time travel in our own consciousness and reset our energies in connection with the way that we experience the past, because we're carrying the past in the form of blocks.
Yeah, good point. Thanks for making that point. My understanding of freeing yourself from the past is to clear it, heal
well,
it.
We're going to be dragged into we are being really held into the past, and then Uranus coming in, even this eclipse we had on the 25th, there was a difficult aspect from Chiron to these Saturn, Capricorn planets, which really brought up a lot of pain for people. And then Uranus coming in with a harmonious aspect, connecting to Jupiter, giving us the ability to move forward. Now, everybody's going to relate to that, differently. Some are going to resist moving forward, and it's going to create more anxiety and stress. Some are just going to feel refreshed, like, I can feel that carrying me out of my wounds. And other people, are just, they might take anxiety meds because they don't want the symptoms. They don't want to feel how difficult this is.
Yeah, I think it depends on how much is there, how much has been resolved and healed in the past, and how much is not. And
it depends on who we're around too. Are we around people that constantly trigger our trauma? Do we have to make changes in our lives to get away from things that are toxic or unhealthy? Yeah. And that's why a lot of breakups are happening too. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No,
but it's an important point. And so I just want to make sure everyone's aware that that's going to be happening at the individual level, and the outer collective aspect of that. Okay.
No matter how painful it gets for people, there is a huge lifeline of support, and it's a high vibration, and it's connected to truth. And so it's going to help. It's almost like we all have this garage filled with stuff. And so Uranus is coming in like the great clearer, and it's wanting to take everything out, and everybody's going to move at a different speed and view it in a different way. You know, some will have it in common, but for some, they'll open the door, it's too overwhelming, they just shut it again. But this opportunity to like actually accelerate the process of clearing it is available for everyone. And so no matter how bad it gets, people have to know that if you just open the door and you give it a chance, there's more helpful support than ever. It's not just
true.
And there's, you know, we have social media. I know it's got its dark aspects to it, but you know, we're not alone in this. Remember before, like social media, you know, before we were able to connect with one another, these things would be, you know, horribly painful, but we can lift one another up. We can hold each other's hands. We can really, you know, just be transparent and communicate with each other and really be a community. And that's really important during this time too.
Good point. Good point. I want to make sure and stress the point that, you know, when humanity does open, so the human collective and Gaia does open that garage door, that it doesn't get overwhelmed, that it's able to face and clear whatever comes up for the extreme highest octave possibility of this coming weekend to be realized and manifested. Again, we have an obligation to see to it that anything and everything, when it comes to opening up, you know, the human collective opening up that garage door, can be dealt with support, with love, in the smoothest way possible, considering how much is there with regards to the collective's past and our own private individual past.
And I mean,
really big deal, and mass meditations is critical for that. Yeah,
and you know, and we also, I mean, it's almost like if we eat bad food, our body knows to expel it and to throw it up, hopefully, so that it doesn't get stored in the body. So there's a lot coming up to the surface, and you know, people need to find a healthy channel for these eruptions, because you know, if tears or anger come up, you know, physical symptoms, you know, it's just be very gentle with yourself. And, you know, even if you feel like you're going crazy, or you're, you know, even if you have to go into the dark a bit, or you feel like you're in a negative zone, you know, it's temporary. If we put judgment on it, it keeps us stuck. If we deny it, it keeps us stuck, and it just keeps it internalized. So, you know, it might be a bit messy for people. They might be puking, crying, wanting to scream, but, you know, you just got to protect other people and do your best not to harm anyone or yourself.
And that's fair enough. That's fair enough. We've all been through those times. You know, I'm thinking in terms of, you know, the collective aspect to that. And, you know, we don't want to see any further destabilization in geopolitics, in society, when clearly through extremely deliberate programs, you know, the cabal, you know, has been doing everything it can to create instability. And, you know, again, we're there to help the collective. That's our responsibility. We're here to keep ourselves, you know, in the best shape possible to do those things that Laura is explaining. You may want to do an internal healing session on Wednesday or Thursday, so that by Friday, we're there for the unconscious collective that doesn't know what the hell is going on and is freaking out. You know, it doesn't know that it's heading to the 5D and it's just a mass clearing process.
Right.
You know, but again, because of the dense, heavy, laden baggage of the past, both individually and collectively, you know, that's going to cause some, or will cause some serious destabilization in politics and society if we're not there to...
But Uranus,
Go ahead.
Keep going. No, keep going.
If we're not there to help the unconscious human collective to clear, so that more and more individuals of the human unconscious are able to eventually get there and not freak out, basically.
Right, and that's why, you know, we have to choose to hold that Uranus light of authenticity, sovereignty, connection to, you know, the divine mind and these greater energies, and really just have a lot of patience and compassion for people who are struggling and for ourselves, because, I mean, everybody's going to, feel it to a certain degree. Something I was going to say. Uranus takes us where we need to go, whether we like it or not. It doesn't matter if it's uncomfortable. So even if it's unstable, it's a growth period that's been activated, which eventually will lead to something. I think a seed is massively being planted, and no matter how one reacts during this time, it's a growth period that will eventually bring them, to the right place. The fact that we've made it so far as a human race, we've come really far. Yep. And there is stuff breathing down our neck still, but I feel like victory's already happened. The energetics, though, is not, always pleasant, but it's really the key is opening the cage, and everybody's able to return to their natural habitat, but they're not used to it, and so it scares the piss out of them when it's actually their true nature. And so they're just letting go of the things that have robbed them, that have held a piece of them, that have harvested their energies, that have stolen and robbed. So this great theft is being resolved, but we have to see who's behind the robbery and the theft. And the end result is we break those agreements, and then we have our sovereignty and liberation. And it doesn't mean we're irresponsible with that. It's the kind of freedom that holds great responsibility, because it has to be aligned with integrity and cosmic and natural law for it to work. And that's a greater freedom, because we know if we abuse freedom, we're locked in a karmic loop. And that's not true freedom. That's false freedom. So people have to really just see the larger picture, and no matter how difficult it gets, what's on the other side is absolutely beautiful.
No, exactly right. And you're right in the sense that we have won, but we still need to consolidate, both energetically and on the physical plane. We still need to complete. We still need to, complete and actualize freedom on the physical plane, and so forth. We're still in the completion process, and we don't want to become complacent and trust the stars and leave it to that, and then let all the white hats do all the heavy lifting and so forth. It's not going to work that way. That does risk delays in planetary liberation, and I want to make sure everyone's very clear on that.
They can only delay the inevitable, really. I mean, we crossed through some very important times that if we hadn't crossed through it in the way that we have, it'd be a completely different story. So yeah, they're just trying to bring us down and make us as miserable as possible. And it's really, we're not on that trajectory. It might appear that way, and I know there's still stuff going on, and there's, but there's not one event that can take place without a huge amount of reporting and journalism that is really digging into the truth. And everything's being called out. Prince Andrew's been shamed. He can't, So, it's a bit of a slow process. But nothing can override the powers that are available, that are cosmic, organic, and based on the planetary consciousness and the deeper seated truth that we all hold deep within ourselves.
That's right. And so it's just a question of how smooth and how fast and how harmonious can it all happen in. And
right.
What's actually, before I ask the final question for this interview, which is, what's the highest octave possibilities of all these mass astrological events going on in these, from January 10th, 11th to 12th? Because I really want you to hold before everybody with both your hands the highest possibility, the highest octave possibility, what that actually looks like. What do we, if we do the right thing. Before I ask that, let's just finish off with January the 12th. All right. What's happening on January the 12th? What do we, again, typically through mass meditations and our own internal work, first of all, let's just talk strictly the scientific astrological aspects of January the 12th before we get into what we can do to make it go better.
Okay, well, Uranus will have already begun to move direct, and Saturn is conjunct Pluto at 22 degrees Capricorn, and Sun and Mercury are also conjunct. So when the Mercury component comes in, our thought forms are really, really powerful to direct these energies. So the highest possible outcome is that we are connected to our higher mind. We're holding strong visions, intentions, and that we're working to integrate polarity. We are creating resolution with the past and some sort of closure or some sort of release from the bondage of these dark cycles in history. And we start moving forward and we look into solutions. We head towards that, mother energy of nurturing. If we still have traumas, let's look forward to the things that we can do to help alleviate the pain that causes, look like in the direction of what solutions can come in instead of allowing our minds to divert into that feedback loop of negative patterning, trauma, victimhood, and start to move forward to admit to ourselves, okay, I might be experiencing this right now, but as I move forward, what do I need to manifest in my life to be healthy? What can I do for the greater good of the collective to feel in my purpose and to feel empowered? What do I need to change in my life to get away from harmful influences? So we have to ask ourselves those questions when a lot is coming up, because that Mercury energy is the magician. The higher octave of Mercury is the magician. It's working with very transformational energies that are changing the whole nature of our physical reality. So our thought forms are the creative piece here. And even if we slip, though, we can self-correct. But, the problem is this shift is anchoring energy in the physical plane that if we're not on board and we get snarled into another trap, it's going to take that much more to pull ourselves out.
Yeah, it causes more conflict and that jarring, jolting sort of experience, which often gets expressed geopolitically and with the Earth, with
Well, yeah, our lack of inner breakthroughs and doing inner work is why we're seeing so many disasters. It's sorry, yeah. Yeah.
No, that's well said. We want to, again, with our inner work and clearing work on the human collective engaged grids, relieving those artificial or etheric dark, interferences, blocks, grids, etc. We're able to put ourselves in a position by this Sunday, January 12th, where we can just focus. After doing what appears to be mostly healing and clearing work with our mass meditations on the collective on the 10th and the 11th, it looks like, based on what you're saying, that the 12th, as the crescendo of this mass meditation trifecta dates, is to, okay, let's put in what we want to materialize on the physical plane in terms of the thought forms that you said as it relates to Mercury, the magician. Let's materialize, manifest exactly what we want through imagining, visualizing with our mass meditation on Sunday, exactly what we want.
Right, and what's going to help too is if for any reason, people shouldn't panic. If for any reason you feel like it was really difficult, Mercury is going to be entering Aquarius on the 16th, and that's going to connect us with Uranus. And then it's going to square Uranus a little bit after that. So there's going to be a lot of tension in the mind to catch up where we might not have really stepped up during this, eclipse. There's still energies following this 3 days of the eclipse and these conjunctions where the mind is going to be pushed into needing to vibrate with truth, needing to vibrate with the higher mind, and needing to really bring that in. So while it's still in Capricorn, it might be a little bit difficult for people, but the aftermath of all this energy is that if we didn't maybe connect in a way that served us and the higher good of the collective, we will get the proper anxiety to get our attention so that we're like, have an epiphany, and then it's not anxiety anymore. It's a big aha moment. So following this window, we still have a lot of opportunity for our minds to get on board, and the power of those conjunctions will still, be very, very fresh. So we have we have a lot longer, to work with all this, of course, but we want to create the readjustments, and the best way, to utilize these energies is don't overly focus on the electronics, what's coming through the TVs, and, it depends on the person, what kind of news that they're even looking at, of course. But I really hope this meets, more of the masses, connect into this and begin to jump on board, because this has to be,
Well, thanks for making that point. Folks, despite the seeming external focus with the mass meditations on the 10th, 11th, and 12th really still follow the golden rule, which is the 80-20 rule. You'll still want to put 80% of your focus on your internal self and health, for that matter. If anxiety comes up, especially before the meditations or even during the meditations, or some sort of negative emotion or something negative weird happens in your so-called external, take it up to the teams or your teams and show it to them and clear it. Don't take things sitting down. Be very proactive in that regard. And again, despite the mass meditations coming up, it's still going to be an 80% internal focus and 20% external focus. Yes, during the mass meditations on the 10th, 11th, and 12th, yes, it will be that 20% external focus for the most part. So stick to that. That's more than just a rule here at 144 at Ground Crew Command. It's partly a culture now. The 80-20 rule still applies, okay? You don't have to put up with these jarring, jolting, or negative emotions as these natural cycles force things up. And again, the more blocks there are from past traumas or whatever, the more difficult it often tends to be. Mindset is always plays a part, but if you got those blocks, and you'll have blocks when you've got anxiety or whatever else that comes up, take it to your teams, clear it. No need to put up with it. Really,
exactly.
really important. And that way you're able to channel, not just channel much more light into Gaia's grids and be a more powerful mass meditator during the mass meditations. You're able to have a bigger vote, a bigger influence during the mass meditations. And, on how high a timeline frequency we come out on the other end come Monday, Tuesday. Go ahead, Laura.
Absolutely, totally agree. And it's launching something huge that will continue. Then we're going to have Uranus square Saturn later on in the year, and Uranus is going to be the wrecking ball to anything that still remains of the old structures. So everything happening on a planetary level, they wanted to put us in lockdown before we reach these sort of alignments, and we haven't. There's a lot of community happening. There's a lot of truth being shared. There's a lot of awareness that's growing. There's still a lot of terrible things taking place too, with weather manipulation and some of, and so that's the final piece that needs to really be knocked out of the park, is dealing with things like child trafficking, satanic ritual abuse, the use of dark technologies. But it's all weakening as we grow and rise together. That's all weakening, and it's going to continue, because when Uranus forms a difficult aspect with Saturn, that's going to knock down the most stubborn part that people might still be holding on to in light of this particular eclipse window that we're in right now in these conjunctions. So it's just been important that we've all gotten to this place together before we've gotten chipped, before the wrong people came into office that are really entrenched in the cabal. There's a lot of positivity that will continue to expand. And that's why a lot are saying we've already claimed victory, because there's a lot of places along the timeline that all of this could have not been possible. And so the power of the human spirit has triumphed. And I don't think there was ever a timeline where, we ultimately failed. There might have been timelines where it fragmented away and people experienced some of it, but then through time travel and trying to correct it, it's almost like this is a very critical window where a lot of beings are coming back in to reconnect with the timeline in a way that actually works. So we're not limited to the linear as much as we think. And I know that kind of takes us in a weird place, and I don't want to, open up that door just yet, but I did.
It's important that you brought that up, because practically half of all the action that's going on in general, both on the physical and non-physical, is both light and dark forces traveling back in time to try to sort out where the timeline went wrong from their perspective. So there will be negative and light forces from the future at various degrees coming back on this 10th, 11th, or 12th dates. And they're going to be there as well. It really will be on for young and old, so to speak. And just to only mention this one more time because I don't want to put too much energy into it. The black covens or Luciferians, black magicians, whatever, they will be doing everything they can with their rituals on critical grid line points where they put buildings and churches on. We need to be there to basically shut that down so that the whole process is nowhere near as difficult as they're going to try to make it. Again, This is a soul obligation. It's a moral and ethical obligation. And if we want to end the era where literally 40,000 children die every year, a day, I should say, if you want to end that, let's make it happen and take charge and show up on the 10th, 11th, and 12th. You'll get the dates for, the mass meditation dates and times. So watch your inbox. This is a critical operation of the light forces. And how would you like to finish off, Laura? What would your parting words be?
Well, I just, want people to know I do a subscription. You can sign up on my website, cosmicgaia.org. I can help you understand your chart. Even if the calendar's full, if there's an urgency, you can send me, an email. All that information's on my site. Levity too. Finding release of, laughter really, can help. And
it doesn't have to be all serious and dramatic. Watch a comedy in between your own healing sessions and that kind of thing. Try to be in nature if you can.
And this is a reunion to oneself. So just remember, this isn't about trying to figure something out, anything other than you standing in your authenticity, you being empowered, you seeing the bigger picture and what's in front of us, what's available, and just saying goodbye to everything that's ever, been a source of harm, control, manipulation. And the hard part is sometimes we don't know we're being played. And that's where it gets tough because it hides and it, sometimes people defend it and they defend it with all their might. So really just, go into sort of a space of neutrality to really, allow the intention of everything that doesn't serve you to be released. Anything that is not for the greater good of yourself or humanity, that you hold that intention that it will be released, it will come to the surface and it will be gone. And to only bring in, the divine instructions of, your own higher mind, the connection with, 0-point source, unified field, whatever you want to call it, and the organic ascension timeline. And also invoke shielding to your auric field of any dark technologies, any, weapons, any harmful technologies, because we have the capacity to upgrade our DNA and completely knock out all these assaults and all these dark weapons. And that's what connecting with Uranus will do. So, just really embrace, just enjoy it, and work at creating harmony with, friends and others. And
definitely. You're right. Having a somewhat neutral and detached approach to these 3 dates in particular is wise. And remember, folks, you can ask literally, and this is strongly recommended. You can ask your higher self and your I am presence with help to use this opportunity of these dates to let go of everything that doesn't serve you. But just remember the caveat, preferably with ease and grace, okay? Don't have to have a whole trainer thrown at you at once,
Yes, and this will improve health. It'll give you access to your great healing abilities, the fact that we're all alchemists. We can turn the lead of this human experience into gold. We're incredibly powerful, creative beings, and we don't have to be a victim to or at the mercy of anything that we're seeing around us. We can stand up and direct our creative energy into resolution, restoration, renewal, transformation, and unity consciousness. With boundaries where appropriate. And that's what the new Saturn can look like.
Fantastic. So there you go, folks. What was your website again, Laura? CosmicGaia.org. Sorry?
CosmicGaia.org.
CosmicGaia.org. Go ahead and subscribe. She gives a lot of great free information alone, and certainly, knowing some of the intimate and big details of your own astrological influences really helps a lot. I've done that a couple of years ago, and it helped explain a few things. It's very empowering stuff. So go check out our website and subscribe. And Laura, thank you once again. And let's make it happen on this tumultuous 3 days in particular.
Oh, definitely. And thank you so much for having me on. And I look forward to connecting more in the future. Yeah,
fantastic. All right, then. That was Laura Eisenhower, folks. And certainly a lot of stuff there to really understand, process, and I suppose apply to our advantage for the liberation of Gaia, humanity, and her children. Let's make it happen. I'll see you on the other side of this very short break. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You're listening to The Unknown Light Warrior. Okay, folks, I trust you got a lot out of that. As you have discovered, that's really great preparation for these huge tumultuous 3 days coming up. So once again, don't get too lost in the news. Focus mostly inwardly. Just build up your energies. Just prepare, focus more inwardly than outwardly. And if you're really struggling and you haven't really found anything strong enough or robust enough to do the job, go ahead and try the ICB. That's really robust. It's over at internalcompressionbreakthrough.com, and you're closely guided, held by the hand, so to speak, and you work with the same teams that we work with on every mass meditation. And of course, spread the article or the link to this show far and wide, because it's the only briefing, in other words, preparation that I know of for these huge dates that we really need to make the most of.